The morning sun cast long shadows across the flight deck of USS Enterprise as Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell gathered her personal belongings from her quarters. The aircraft carrier hummed with its usual activity, but something felt different today. After 18 months of distinguished service as a naval intelligence officer, she was leaving the ship under circumstances that would remain classified for decades to come. Sarah had always been different from her fellow officers. While others focused on standard naval protocols, she possessed an unusual ability to decode enemy submarine communications that had earned her recognition from the highest levels of command. Her small frame and quiet demeanor often caused people to underestimate her, but those who worked closely with her knew that behind her gentle eyes lay one of the sharpest military minds in the Pacific Fleet. The transfer orders had come through just 48 hours earlier, marked with the highest security clearances. Sarah was being reassigned to a specialized intelligence unit operating out of Pearl Harbor, but the real reason for her departure was known only to a select few. Deep beneath the ocean's surface, approximately 200 nautical miles from their current position, the submarine USS Blackwater was engaged in a covert mission that had gone terribly wrong. Commander James Rodriguez had been tracking Soviet submarine movements for 3 weeks when his sonar operator detected something extraordinary. The enemy vessel wasn't following standard patrol patterns. Instead, it seemed to be conducting systematic searches of the ocean floor, mapping underwater terrain with suspicious precision. What Rodriguez didn't know was that the Soviets were searching for a lost nuclear device that had fallen from one of their submarines during a training exercise. Sarah had been the first to recognize the significance of the intercepted communications. While other intelligence officers dismissed the transmissions as routine patrol chatter, she identified subtle code variations that suggested a search and recovery operation. Her analysis indicated that the Soviets were becoming increasingly desperate, expanding their search pattern in ways that violated international waters. The situation became critical when Sarah discovered that the lost device was not just any nuclear material. Her decoded messages revealed that it contained experimental technology that could revolutionize submarine warfare. If recovered by the enemy, it would give them a significant advantage in undersea operations. The implications were staggering, and Sarah knew that immediate action was required. Captain Morrison, the Enterprise's commanding officer, had listened to Sarah's briefing with growing concern. The young lieutenant had presented her findings with characteristic precision, but what she was suggesting would require breaking several established protocols. She recommended that USS Blackwater abandon its current surveillance mission and instead focus on locating the device before the Soviets could recover it. The problem was that Commander Rodriguez had strict orders to maintain his position and continue monitoring enemy movements. Any deviation from his mission parameters would constitute a direct violation of naval regulations. Furthermore, the area where Sarah believed the device had fallen was in disputed waters, making any recovery operation diplomatically sensitive. As Sarah packed her final belongings, she thought about the conversation she had with Morrison the previous evening. The captain had revealed that her transfer was not routine. Instead, she was being secretly deployed to coordinate directly with USS Blackwater's crew. Her expertise would be needed to guide the submarine search operation while maintaining plausible deniability for the Enterprise. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Sarah would officially transfer to Pearl Harbor, but her transport would make an unscheduled stop at a predetermined coordinate where USS Blackwater would surface briefly to take her aboard. From there, she would work directly with Rodriguez and his crew to locate the lost device before the Soviets could complete their own recovery efforts. What made the situation particularly delicate was that USS Blackwater would need to operate in complete radio silence once Sarah came aboard. This meant that Rodriguez would be making tactical decisions without direct communication with Fleet Command. If anything went wrong, both the submarine crew and Sarah could face court-martial proceedings. Sarah understood the risks, But she also recognized the critical importance of the mission. The technology contained in the lost device represented a potential shift in the balance of underwater warfare. Allowing it to fall into enemy hands was simply not an option, regardless of the personal consequences she might face. As she made her way to the helicopter landing pad, Sarah reflected on the unusual path that had led her to this moment. Growing up in a small farming community in Iowa, she had never imagined that her gift for languages and pattern recognition would eventually make her one of the Navy's most valuable intelligence assets. Her ability to understand the subtle nuances of enemy communications had made the difference in several previous operations. The helicopter pilot, Lieutenant Commander Davis, greeted her with professional courtesy, but said nothing about their true destination. As far as the official records were concerned, they were making a routine transport flight to Pearl Harbor. The actual coordinates programmed into the navigation system told a different story. As the Enterprise grew smaller beneath them, Sarah watched the vast expanse of Pacific Ocean spread out in all directions. Somewhere below those blue waters, Commander Rodriguez and his crew were waiting for her arrival, unaware that their next actions would challenge everything they had been taught about following orders and naval protocol. The weight of responsibility settled on Sarah's shoulders as the helicopter carried her toward an uncertain future. In less than 6 hours, she would convince a submarine commander to risk his career and the safety of his crew by defying direct orders from Naval Command. The success of their mission would depend not only on her intelligence analysis, but on Rodriguez's willingness to trust a young lieutenant he had never met. The ocean below held secrets that could change the course of the Cold War, and Sarah Mitchell was about to play a crucial role in determining which side would ultimately claim victory in this underwater chess match. Her quiet departure from the Enterprise was just the beginning of a story that would test the limits of military discipline and personal courage. The periscope cut through the surface of the Pacific Ocean at exactly 1400 hours, creating barely a ripple in the calm waters. Commander James Rodriguez pressed his eye to the viewing apparatus and scanned the horizon methodically. The coordinates Sarah Mitchell had provided were precise, and he had positioned USS Blackwater exactly where she had requested. Rodriguez was a career naval officer who had built his reputation on strict adherence to protocol and unwavering discipline. In 22 years of service, he had never deliberately disobeyed a direct order from Fleet Command. Yet here he was, preparing to surface his submarine to take aboard a civilian consultant whose very presence on his vessel would violate multiple regulations. The helicopter appeared as a distant speck against the azure sky, growing larger as it approached their position. Rodriguez felt his pulse quicken as he realized there was no turning back. Once Sarah Mitchell stepped aboard his submarine, he would be committed to a course of action that could end his military career. Chief Petty Officer Williams approached the periscope station with obvious concern etched across his weathered features. Williams had served under Rodriguez for 8 years and had developed an instinct for reading his commander's moods. The tension radiating from Rodriguez was unlike anything he had witnessed during their numerous covert operations. The helicopter hovered approximately 50 feet above the submarine as Rodriguez ordered his crew to prepare for emergency surface procedures. Within minutes, USS Blackwater emerged from the depths, water cascading from its sleek hull as it stabilized on the surface. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, securing the vessel and preparing to receive their unexpected passenger. Sarah descended from the helicopter using a rescue harness, her small duffel bag containing everything she would need for the mission. The moment her feet touched the submarine's deck, she felt the weight of the entire operation settling on her shoulders. Rodriguez greeted her with professional courtesy, but she could see the doubt in his eyes. Once safely inside the submarine, Sarah was escorted to the communications center, where she would establish her temporary workspace. The cramped quarters were filled with sophisticated electronic equipment that hummed quietly as the submarine prepared to submerge once again. Rodriguez gathered his senior officers for an emergency briefing, knowing that what he was about to tell them would challenge everything they believed about military protocol. Sarah spread her decoded intelligence reports across the table in the submarine's wardroom. The documents contained information so sensitive that even Rodriguez's security clearance had not previously granted him access to such materials. As she explained the significance of the lost Soviet device, the room fell silent with the weight of understanding. The technology contained within the enemy's lost package represented a revolutionary advancement in submarine detection systems. If successfully recovered by the Soviets, it would render American submarines vulnerable to detection at ranges previously thought impossible. The strategic implications were staggering, potentially shifting the balance of power in underwater warfare for decades to come. Rodriguez studied the sonar readings that Sarah had analyzed, recognizing patterns that his own crew had missed during their weeks of surveillance. Her interpretation of the Soviet search patterns revealed a methodical grid search that was gradually closing in on the device's probable location. Time was running out, and decisive action was required immediately. The decision to abandon their surveillance mission and begin an active search operation would constitute a direct violation of Rodriguez's orders. Fleet Command had specifically instructed him to maintain his position and continue monitoring enemy submarine movements. Leaving his assigned patrol area without authorization was a court-martial offense under normal circumstances. Sarah presented Rodriguez with a choice that no military commander should ever have to make. He could follow his orders and potentially allow a critical technological advantage to fall into enemy hands, or he could trust the analysis of a young intelligence officer and risk the careers and freedom of his entire crew. The submarine's sonar operator, Petty Officer Jackson, had been quietly listening to the briefing while monitoring his equipment. As Sarah finished her presentation, he reported detecting unusual acoustic signatures approximately 12 miles from their current position. The sounds were consistent with intensive underwater excavation activities, suggesting that the Soviet search operation was intensifying. Rodriguez made his decision with the calm precision that had defined his military career. He ordered USS Blackwater to proceed to the coordinates Sarah had identified, knowing that each mile they traveled took them further from their authorized patrol area and deeper into potential danger. The submarine turned silently through the dark waters, its crew working with heightened awareness of the risks they were accepting. As they approached the search area, Sarah worked closely with the sonar team to refine their understanding of the underwater terrain. Her analysis of the intercepted communications had provided crucial insights into the Soviet search methodology, allowing the American crew to narrow their focus to the most probable locations for the lost device. The challenge they faced was enormous. The ocean floor in this region was characterized by deep trenches and rocky outcroppings that could hide a device the size of a small automobile. The Soviets had been searching for weeks with multiple vessels, yet they had not yet succeeded in locating their lost technology. Rodriguez implemented a search pattern that balanced thoroughness with the need for speed. His crew understood that every hour they spent in unauthorized waters increased the risk of detection by enemy forces or discovery by their own fleet command. The mission required perfect execution with no margin for error. The submarine's advanced sonar systems began mapping the ocean floor with unprecedented detail, revealing features that had never been charted by previous surveys. Sarah monitored the communications frequencies, listening for any indication that the Soviets had detected their presence or were close to locating the device themselves. Hours passed in tense silence as USS Blackwater methodically searched the designated area. The crew worked with the focused intensity of professionals who understood that failure was not an option. Rodriguez found himself questioning his decision with each passing hour. knowing that he had committed his command to a course of action based entirely on his faith in Sarah's intelligence analysis. The breakthrough came just as Rodriguez was beginning to consider the possibility that Sarah's calculations had been incorrect. Petty Officer Jackson detected a metallic signature buried beneath a rocky overhang approximately 400 feet below their current position. The object's dimensions and composition were consistent with the specifications Sarah had provided for the Soviet device. Rodriguez ordered the submarine to position itself directly above the target, while his crew prepared the specialized recovery equipment that would be needed to retrieve the device. The operation would require precision maneuvering in treacherous underwater terrain, with the constant threat of Soviet detection adding urgency to every action. As USS Blackwater prepared for the most challenging phase of the mission, Rodriguez realized that his decision to trust Sarah Mitchell had been vindicated. The lost Soviet technology was within reach, but recovering it would require the kind of daring underwater operation that defined the finest traditions of submarine warfare. The metallic ping echoed through USS Blackwater's hull as the submarine's robotic arm made contact with the Soviet device 400 feet below the surface. Commander Rodriguez watched the video feed with intense concentration, knowing that the next few hours would determine whether his career-ending gamble had been justified. Sarah Mitchell stood beside the control station, her eyes fixed on the sonar displays that revealed the device's precarious position. The cylindrical object, approximately 6 feet in length, had become wedged beneath a rocky outcropping that made direct recovery impossible. The submarine would need to maneuver with surgical precision to extract the technology without triggering a collapse that could bury it permanently. Chief Petty Officer Martinez, the submarine's most experienced recovery specialist, operated the robotic arm with the steady hands of a surgeon. 23 years of underwater operations had taught him to work with mechanical extensions as if they were his own limbs, but this recovery presented challenges unlike any he had previously encountered. The device's outer casing showed signs of significant damage from its impact with the ocean floor. Sections of the protective housing had cracked, revealing glimpses of sophisticated electronic components that confirmed Sarah's assessment of its technological importance. The damage also made the recovery more delicate, as any additional stress could destroy the very technology they were risking everything to obtain. Rodriguez monitored multiple communication frequencies while his crew worked to extract the device. The Soviet search vessels had not abandoned their own recovery efforts, and their expanding search pattern would bring them dangerously close to USS Blackwater's position within hours. The American submarine would need to complete the recovery and escape the area before enemy forces detected their presence. The first attempt to lift the device resulted in a shower of rocks and sediment that temporarily obscured the video feed. Martinez adjusted his approach, using the robotic arm to carefully clear debris from around the object, while Sarah provided real-time analysis of its structural integrity based on her knowledge of Soviet engineering principles. As the recovery operation continued, Petty Officer Jackson reported detecting distant propeller sounds on his sonar equipment. Multiple vessels were approaching their position from the northeast, moving in a coordinated search pattern that suggested military rather than civilian traffic. The Soviet recovery fleet was expanding its search area and would reach their coordinates within approximately 90 minutes. Rodriguez faced another critical decision. He could abort the recovery operation immediately and attempt to escape undetected, or he could continue the dangerous extraction process while enemy vessels closed in on their position. Either choice carried enormous risks, but abandoning the mission now would mean that his violations of naval protocol had achieved nothing. Sarah studied the acoustic signature of the approaching vessels and identified 3 distinct contacts. 2 appeared to be standard Soviet patrol boats, but the third exhibited the characteristics of a specialized recovery ship equipped with deep-sea salvage equipment. The enemy was bringing serious resources to bear on their search operation, confirming the critical importance of the lost technology. The tension aboard USS Blackwater became almost unbearable as Martinez continued his delicate work with the robotic arm. Each movement required careful consideration of the device's damaged condition and the unstable underwater terrain that surrounded it. A single mistake could result in the loss of both the Soviet technology and potentially the submarine itself. Rodriguez ordered his crew to prepare for emergency dive procedures while maintaining position above the recovery site. If enemy vessels detected them during the extraction process, USS Blackwater would need to abandon the operation and dive immediately to avoid confrontation. The submarine's presence in disputed waters without authorization would be impossible to explain if they were discovered. The breakthrough came when Martinez succeeded in attaching a recovery cable to the device's most structurally sound section. The robotic arm had worked for over 3 hours to clear debris and position the attachment point. But the actual lifting operation would be even more challenging than the preparation had been. Sarah monitored her communication equipment for any indication that the Soviets had detected unusual underwater activity. The enemy vessels were maintaining radio silence as they approached, but their sonar systems would be actively scanning for any anomalies in the water column. USS Blackwater's presence would be difficult to conceal if the Soviet ships came within direct detection range. The device began to rise slowly from its rocky prison, suspended by the recovery cable as Martinez operated the winch with microscopic precision. The damaged sections of the outer casing creaked ominously under the stress of lifting, but the internal structure appeared to be holding together despite the previous impact damage. Rodriguez watched the approaching surface contacts on his sonar display while simultaneously monitoring the recovery operation. The timing would be critical. His crew would need to secure the Soviet device and begin emergency dive procedures before the enemy vessels could establish sonar contact with their submarine. As the device cleared the rocky outcropping and began its ascent toward USS Blackwater's hull, Sarah detected increased radio chatter from the approaching Soviet ships. Her understanding of their communication protocols allowed her to interpret the transmissions, and what she heard sent a chill through the submarine's control room. The enemy vessels had detected unusual acoustic activity in the water and were altering course to investigate. Their specialized recovery ship was equipped with sophisticated sonar systems that could potentially locate USS Blackwater even at significant depth. The American submarine would need to complete the recovery operation within the next 30 minutes or risk discovery by enemy forces. Martinez succeeded in securing the device within the submarine's hull just as the first Soviet patrol boat appeared on the horizon. Rodriguez ordered immediate dive procedures, and USS Blackwater descended into the dark depths of the Pacific with its precious cargo safely aboard. The submarine leveled off at a depth of 600 feet and began moving away from the recovery site using silent running procedures. The crew worked with practiced efficiency to secure the Soviet device and prepare for the return journey to American waters. Sarah examined the recovered technology with growing excitement as she recognized components that confirmed her original assessment. The device contained experimental sonar systems that would have given the Soviets unprecedented ability to track American submarines. Its recovery represented a significant intelligence victory that justified the enormous risks Rodriguez and his crew had accepted. The return voyage to Pearl Harbor would take 18 hours, during which USS Blackwater would need to avoid detection by both Soviet and American naval forces. Rodriguez's unauthorized deviation from his patrol assignment would require careful explanation when they reached port, but the successful recovery of critical enemy technology would likely mitigate the consequences of his protocol violations. As USS Blackwater disappeared into the depths of the Pacific Ocean, Sarah Mitchell reflected on the extraordinary events that had begun with her quiet departure from the Enterprise. Her analysis had proven correct. Rodriguez's courage had made the mission possible, and the submarine crew's skill had achieved what many would have considered impossible. The Soviet device now secured aboard the American submarine would be studied by the Navy's most advanced research teams, providing insights that would influence underwater warfare tactics for decades to come. The mission that had required breaking established protocols and defying direct orders had ultimately served the greater good of national security. Rodriguez would face a formal review of his actions, but the successful recovery of the enemy technology would likely result in commendation rather than court-martial. His willingness to trust Sarah's intelligence analysis and risk his career for the mission's success demonstrated the kind of leadership that defined the finest traditions of submarine warfare. The quiet departure that had begun the adventure was now complete, but the impact of Sarah Mitchell's courage and Commander Rodriguez's decisive action would resonate through the halls of naval intelligence for years to come. They had proven that sometimes the most important victories required the courage to defy regulations in service of a higher purpose.